Wake Up with Patti Katter.
I love the show.
I never miss an episode. It's the best.
I turn it on and turn it up.
Hello, everybody. You're listening to and watching Wake Up with Patti Katter, and I am your host, Patti Katter. Today, I have Phil Swanson on the show. Phil is from the Go Lead Everything podcast. Welcome, Phil.
Hey, Patti. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. It's kind of like a Monday to us because it's just right after Labor Day when we're recording, and it's the Tuesday after, right?
Yeah, there you go. It's a long weekend, and we're ready to get going and kick it again this week.
Time to lead some stuff. All right.
There you go.
I like that. So, Phil, could you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, where you came from, maybe a little bit about your childhood, teenage years, just so we can get a little background story on who you really are?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was growing up, I was very guided by my parents, right? My life went in a direction basically based on what came to me external. And I was lucky to have and fortunate to have really amazing parents that taught me hard work. They put me in, I had different experiences in homeschool and high school. I was in private school, public schools, all sorts of different things, played a bunch of different sports. I even had an article written about me in high school called The Jack of All Trades because I was in band and choir and football and baseball and basketball. And I just did those things because that's what my family did. My parents were music teachers. My older brother was in sports. And that was kind of this identity that I had. I was kind of Phil, the sports guy, Phil. I just did a bunch of stuff. And throughout my life, I saw, Patti, that I kept falling into leadership roles. And it started with high school and really being identified as a captain for every sport that I was on. And I started to see, in that experience, there was a lot of skilled people. They were skilled at their sport or they had, some strength, and people saw that as leadership. But then when they got in those roles, they weren't necessarily equipped to do some of the things that leaders are required to do, like speak. And I was one of those. I was afraid to speak. I remember being on my football team in high school. I was talking to my high school coach, and he was talking to the captains looking for a vocal leader on the team. And we really didn't have that. We didn't have a vocal leader at the time. And I had a conversation with my mom about it. She gave me some really great mindset that comes out of our Christian background, but just you got to answer the call. If you're called, if people have needs, you really need to answer that call and serve them. And so even though it was uncomfortable for me, I started stepping up and speaking more and saying things and really trying to be a more vocal leader on that football team. And then that carried me into university. I ended up being a captain, 2-year captain at my university playing baseball. Then I get to the corporate world and moved up pretty quick. And the only jury I've ever served on in jury duty, was asked to be the jury foreman. So there's this constant pattern of just accidentally sort of falling into leadership roles. And it kind of made me think like, I need to be more purposeful because clearly there's something to this. I'm not just identified by these people or asked to do these things by accident, right? And I'd really been living my life on accident, and Go Lead Everything is the start of me really being purposeful on how I can serve people and help build more leaders in the world.
I think that's kind of funny because most of my guests, they'll talk about these little snowball moments where you just, you have a tiny little snowball and it just kind of builds and builds and builds. And then before you know it, you have this amazing snowman.
There you go.
So one of the things that I noticed about you is you were talking about like it was kind of hard for you to talk in public. I'm curious though, how were you at home with your family? Were you pretty vocal or were you still kind of to yourself?
That's a great question, actually, Patti. I was always the one being interrupted by my family, and I still am to this day. I'm getting a little better at that. But, I've got an older brother who's a couple years older than I am. I've got a younger brother who's 10 years younger than I am. So we're pretty far apart. And, I have a strong mother, hardworking father. And, I'd say I was vocal, but a lot of times I was passive and I would just kind of sit back and allow things to happen. I'd let myself kind of get walked over a little bit. And, I'm not saying that's necessarily right or wrong, but more recently, I've become more vocal, just simply about the things that I want to do and the places I'm going. And when you do that, you're gonna face resistance from people, especially those you love that are seeing something different out of you than they've probably seen before. And I'm sure a lot of people who've done that can relate, just from friends and family and acquaintances, et cetera. So yeah, that's an interesting question. I'd say I was always the one who's being interrupted. I'm accused of mumbling a lot, Patti.
Sometimes they don't want to know what you were mumbling, right?
Yeah, right.
So one of the questions I like to ask my guests is, what is one trial that you've had in your life, either through your, when you were growing up or in business? And how did you overcome that? Yeah. Just one.
That's
I know there's like question. A million.
Yeah, I'd say one of the biggest trials that you face as a leader is when people don't follow. And this kind of goes against some of the mainstream philosophy on leadership. And I 100% agree with the mindset that, what makes a leader is they have followers, right? You're not leading people, then you're not a leader, right? But I would say this, I'd say at the start, every leader needs to be willing to stand alone and be comfortable standing alone, standing on what's right. And it'll feel like no one's following at first. And it can feel very, very lonely. And I always tell people, like, if you're going to networking events and, lots of people, like, it's kind of like girls going to the restroom, Patti, it's like, hey, come with me. I don't want to go alone. Right. And I always tell people they need to be willing to stand alone before they're ever going to be ready to lead people. And I've gone through some of that in my life. You stand up for what's right. Like, you got teammates maybe that are doing the wrong things. Right. I had some of that in my athletics career, and you stand up to those individuals. And at the time, you're at different levels of maturity, different levels of growth, and you end up facing a lot of criticism for that and taking heat for that. But I think that was some of the major challenges I've gone through, is really just standing up for what's right when you're right in the face of criticism and almost persecution to a degree.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And it kind of leads back to, recently I was on a show with Mike Young, and he asked, basically, what is one of the questions that you have for me as a leader? And mine was kind of like the imposter syndrome, and it's kind of funny because your answer just kind of goes hand in hand with that, because as a leader, you have to stand up and you have to do the right thing and you have to talk, but sometimes we get scared, and unsure, like, how is this going to be perceived? How are people going to read into what I'm saying? Because a lot of people like to read into things, especially on the internet. So maybe, have you dealt with that at all? And do you have any advice for leaders who are, they're a little bit apprehensive maybe about saying something or doing something? Mm-hmm. What would you say to them?
Patti, this is a good one. I know everyone can relate to it. I can, for sure. When I'm in that position, I've faced this actually a lot in Bible study. I don't know if y'all are churchgoers, but you're sitting in class, right? Or you think an answer to something, but you're hesitant to speak up because you don't want to look silly or whatever. Or you're in a meeting and, there's people that are saying things, maybe they're at a different level of the organization than you are. And you're afraid to share and what repercussions might come from that. In those moments, what's really helpful for me is to go back to my identity and realize that I am a child of God. And that's just my faith background and coming through. But knowing who I am, I know that God has put me exactly where I need to be to get where I need to go. And I'm not having those thoughts just for, random, right? He's foreordained our good works so we can walk in them. And so as we go about our daily lives, one of my favorite quotes by one of the Christian reformers back in the 1500s, Martin Luther, if you're familiar with Martin Luther, he's got a quote called "Go and sin boldly." And he doesn't mean, go sin. He just means go forth boldly. And we know we're going to mess up. We know we're going to make mistakes. We know we can say the wrong things at times. And when we do that, we adjust, we move on. And you got to realize everybody feels just as insecure as you do, or at least did at one point in their life, until they spoke up enough and built that skill set, built that confidence from doing it over and over and really building new capability. And, you're going to do that too, as you more and more just become true to who you are all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And you know what? I'm surprised I haven't heard that quote before. Man,
Yeah, it's a good
like
one. That Martin Luther quote.
Yeah.
Go and sin boldly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the things that we were talking about before the show is you have a little giveaway for my listeners. Am I bringing it up too early?
No, not at all. So what we're doing right now is we've got 5 spots available. We're offering 5 of Patti's listeners. If you go to goleadeverything.com, that's where you can find me, find out more about the podcast. But right on the home landing page, there's a, if you are hungry for growth, click here. And we're really passionate about helping people that are hungry for growth. You know, we're not dragging the lazy, we're leading the hungry. And I'm a big believer that you don't make leaders, you find them. And when we find them, we mold them and we help build their vision for what's possible and help them see their true potential. But if you go there, click there, you can book a 30-minute session with me. And in addition to that 30-minute free mindset session, which I offer to anybody who goes there, we'll offer a free hour of coaching to the first 5 that put Wake Up with Patti Katter in their booking in the comments. So head to goleadeverything.com. If you know somebody who'd be interested or a good candidate for that too, please share it with them. And I'd love to offer them some value.
That's really exciting. I mean, one of the best things that's helped me through my whole entire podcasting career is basically good mentors and good coaches. That's so, so important. What are some of the things that you coach on?
I'm real big on mindset in a lot of areas. So, I'm a faith-based guy. So if that's your cup of tea, I'm happy to share a lot of that with you. And if we have conversations, it's just going to come out of me because that's who I am. One of the things I'm really big on right now is figuring out how you can be smarter in the world and leverage tools of, business, real estate, mentors that are in groups of individuals, networking, taxes, all sorts of different things that I call them the things I wish I knew, right? Like the best time to start was 10 years ago and the second best time's today. Mm-hmm. So I'm really passionate about helping people accelerate down a path and get where they need to go, help them win at what they want to accomplish. And so, the first thing we do is simply have a conversation about what you're looking to get out of life. And then we see how we can offer you value in a bunch of different ways. And through the GLE network, folks like yourself, right? I'm happy if people in our network will bring you value to help you make connections and continue to grow your network as well.
I love that. Tell our listeners a little bit about your podcast. I know about it because you are so, so nice and had me on your show, but tell our listeners what it is that you do. What kind of people do you interview? Tell us all the juicy details.
For sure. So Go Lead Everything podcast. You can find it on all the major platforms, direct links from goleadeverything.com. We started the podcast in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. And I've been thinking about starting a podcast for a long time. And as I was thinking about what I could do with the extra time I had, not commuting during COVID, we were working from home. There was no excuse for me, Patti, not to start it. And so we just got on Anchor FM, downloaded the app. I recorded my first episode and put that thing up. And in hindsight, talk about being okay with failure. That's not the right way necessarily to launch a podcast. So, I jumped in. I've been doing an episode a week for a little over a year. And it's really just been incredible meeting new people, getting to interview some of my closest friends, mentors, folks like Tony Watley in the 365 Driven Society, folks like yourself, Patti, who have huge followings and are really doing amazing things, giving back to our veterans. Thank you for all the tremendous work you've done and continue to do in that space. But yeah, we're Go Lead Everything podcast. Check it out. If you get value from it, share it out and let others get value too.
So exciting. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram at Real Phil Swanson. I am on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter at Phil Swanson, just Phil Swanson. And you can get there from goleadeverything.com. That's really my landing page for everything.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So on your landing page, tell our listeners, where exactly do you go to sign up for your coaching or to contact you?
Right on the homepage, there's a big, if you are hungry for growth, click here. And if you go goleadeverything.com, right on the front page, click here. It goes right to my calendar tool and you can book time with me directly from there.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Is there anything you'd like to say before we wrap up today?
Patti, as I'm thinking about podcasting, one of the main reasons and drivers for me starting was just the mindset that it would be super darn cool to be able to see like my great grandpa or great grandma having a conversation with people. Right. And so I'm always thinking of what would I leave the next generation? And that's actually a question I asked just about everybody on my show. And I've gotten just dynamite answers from just about everyone. But one of the things I'm really big on is simply being a producer in the world and not a consumer. And for a long time in my life, I went through my life accidentally, just kind of as a consumer. I would go to businesses, go to coffee shops, go places, go to work, just basically consuming, right? And it's not that I wasn't bringing value. It's just I didn't really have the mindset of what can I bring to every situation I'm in? What can I add to the world? How can I benefit more and more people? How can I create something that's going to build a legacy for my family for generations, right? It's the Proverbs mentality of a wise man builds a legacy for his children's children's children, right? So, I'd say that's the big mindset piece I want to leave your audience with today. If you're listening right now and you can be a better producer of value for other people, don't be afraid to start today. You can be the person who you want to be today. You don't have to wait.
So that blows my mind because we did not talk at all before the show, right? I mean, as far as anything to do with this subject, correct? I just want our listeners to hear this. So before the show and last night before I went to bed, I started writing down a few things. And one of the biggest things that's been on my heart is podcasts are here long after we are gone. And I cannot explain to you what my heart just felt when you were talking about this, because it is so important. Like, what are you going to leave behind is so important and so on my mind right now. And that just blows me away that we're on the same page with this. A lot of my listeners don't know this, but this has happened several times throughout the last 14, 15 years for me. I will have something majorly on my heart and somebody in my life will pop up within just a few hours usually and kind of reconfirm. So, Phil, that message, I know it's so important. And I think that it's going to go a long, long way with my listeners because that just really resonates with me. And usually if something like that happens, it's big. So, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really interesting that you shared that.
Patti. You are leaving a tremendous legacy, Patti. You already have, and I know you're only going up from here. So, super proud of all the stuff you're doing, and just am so amazed by all the work you're doing. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Likewise. I am really impressed with you. My listeners don't know this either. I was booked out the entire rest of my show or my season for this year. And I was on Phil's show and felt so strongly that he had a lot to offer to our listeners here that I was like, I don't care. We're just squeezing you in. We're going to figure it out and we're getting you on the show. So I hope
glad you did.
Yeah, I hope everybody listening just gets a lot from Phil. And make sure you go to the website, Phil's website. Phil, could you say your website name again?
Sure thing, Patti. GoLeadEverything.com, just like it sounds.
All right. So everybody go over to Phil's website, GoLeadEverything.com, and make sure you sign up for his coaching and follow him on social media. He's a breath of fresh air on social media. So thank you, Phil, for being on the show. And thank you to all my listeners. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Wake Up with Patti Katter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Follow Patti at Patti Katter on Facebook and Instagram.
Get social.
You can now watch Wake Up with Patti Katter on Amazon TV and Roku.
It's the only podcast I listen to.
Be sure to check out Patti's apparel line, The Patriotic Mermaid, at thepatrioticmermaid.com and on social media at The Patriotic Mermaid.
I love it.